Welcome, everyone, to Real Estate on the Up, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the real estate world in Orlando. I'm your host, Kyle Madorin, and on this show, we're all about pulling back the curtain with the unfiltered truth about real estate. We're not just here to sell houses. We're here to provide concierge-style service because everyone loves being treated like a VIP. This podcast is your go-to resource for transparency, integrity, and the knowledge you need to make smarter real estate decisions. Whether you're a seasoned investor or a first-time home buyer, we've got you covered. So buckle up and get ready to move up in the world of real estate. It's time for Real Estate on the Up. Welcome back to Real Estate on the Up. I'm your host, Kyle Madorin, and today we've got a powerhouse of the real estate world joining us, Jeremy Beland. Jeremy isn't just talking the talk. Since launching his investing journey in 2017, he's closed over 450 deals spanning wholesaling, flipping, and rentals, and has generated more than $10 million in gross profits. He's the founder of two seven-figure firms, NH Homebuyers and Coastal Florida Homebuyers, and the mastermind behind the REI Freedom Coaching Program, where he's guiding budding investors through building massive buyers list, mastering the art of disposition, and scaling deal flow like a pro. Jeremy's been in front of crowds at top-tier REI conferences, host of meetups, and a frequent guest on major industry podcasts. His mission? To help others unlock financial freedom via real estate. So Jeremy, thank you so much for stepping into the On the Up spotlight. Let's dive in and get into your story, strategies, and what's coming next. So here he is. Jeremy, let's get started by telling us a little bit about how you got into real estate.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. I really greatly appreciate it. It's a great honor. And yeah, my name's Jeremy Beland. As we record this today, I am sadly 49 years old, approaching 50, but I started my real estate journey at 40, but it actually started before then. I won't go too far back into the future, but basically, I grew up with a family that struggled financially most of my childhood, to a point where right before I went into high school, my family ended up losing everything through bankruptcy and foreclosure, had our cars repossessed overnight and everything else. Next thing I know, I found myself at 3 different high schools in the first couple of years because we were just basically bouncing around from one place to the next, because they were struggling financially to get by. So really, as I went into adulthood, I ended up dropping out of high school, didn't go to college, didn't really have much direction and guidance. And I honestly thought I would just be one of these guys who just worked under the table jobs that had no future. I wanted more, but didn't know how about getting it. And then, as I got into my early 20s, I found myself as a high-rise window cleaner hanging off skyscrapers in Boston. And for you guys listening, I live up here in New Hampshire, so Boston, about 45 minutes south of me. And, I was doing that for $12 an hour, a whopping $24,000 a year. And I thought that's what I would do, and delivered pizzas and nights and weekends to make some ends meet. And then a friend of mine, because I was playing tackle semi-pro football in my early 20s, a friend of mine came and said, Hey, I have an opportunity where I work, and why don't you come and apply for it? Basically what it was getting an entry-level sales position at a company selling fax machines, printers, copiers, things of that nature, business to business. Now, I didn't have any sales experience. Again, I have no college degree, no education. Heck, dude, I never even owned a tie. My first tie I ever bought was just for this job interview. And I always joke, they were like, oh, you're a guy who's breathing, you're hired. They must have been really desperate because I brought nothing to the table, but they hired me. And I went
You were the right man for the job at the time.
Apparently, right? I'm happy that I was, but I went from $24,000 a year hanging off a skyscraper in cold, covered in pigeon poop and smog every day, to $24,000 with upside, sitting in a comfy, cozy office every day. So my life was completely different, and it was a big change for me. But I ended up finding some success eventually, business to business. Started to learn a lot about sales. Started going to the library, learning, getting sales CDs and everything else. And for anybody who's done business to business, it requires a lot of cold calling, door knocking, getting past the gatekeepers and things of that nature, all which was great experience to get me to where I am today. So I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. Life was great. Got out of that sales job, got into another sales job. The next thing I know, I'm in my early 30s, finding myself making well into the six figures. I have a house, I'm married, I got 2 young kids, I got a pool, I got new cars. We had a camper up at a campground up in Maine. Like, from a child who literally had one pair of pants all of 7th grade to achieve this, I hit the epitome of what I thought success was, right? The white picket fence America. And things were great. until they weren't. And that happened during 2009, 2010 when the Great Recession happened. And that changed everything. Everything that I achieved was wiped out over, it felt like overnight. Not only was it a housing crisis, but it was an employment crisis. I know Florida, where you're recording, got hit really hard with the houses. So did we up north.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I was out of work, and outside of my house being up 150 down $150,000 or upside down $150,000 within like a year and a half, and with no hope of getting out of it. I also couldn't find a job anywhere because I had no high school education, had no college
Right.
education. Nobody was hiring, and everybody else was out of work too. So all those people that were, more educated than me or more experienced with me were taking lower paying jobs, which kind of pushed me out of the market. So I was basically at this midlife crisis at 33 years old. I spiraled into depression, became suicidal. I felt like, oh my God, I can't take care of my family. Where am I going to go from this? I was learning about real estate investing at that time. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. If guys haven't read that, I strongly suggest that you
Yeah,
do.
that's a great book. Yeah.
So that's where I was kind of going, and I was like, well, I can't afford to go back into college. I can't get my real estate career up and running. I can't even find a job. What do I do? I had an opportunity to get a reset button going into the Air Force. The Air Force was going to be my free education, give me a job that I thought would be recession proof if I came out. So I was going to do it. It was the only thing I could do. I was going to go from making $140,000 a year to 2 years later making $30,000 a year, leaving my family for 6 months in the Air Force. But there was a problem. I needed a top secret clearance to get into the Air Force, and I couldn't get it if I was going into bankruptcy and foreclosure, which I was on the brink of at that time. And that's when I reached out to a local real estate investor because I was learning about real estate investing at that time to see if he could do anything. And he did. He came out and said, "Hey, Jeremy, the mortgage company that you work with, they're terrible." It was like my fifth one at the time. He says, "But I've been very successful getting short sales done with this bank, and I feel very confident that we could do this. And rather than going through foreclosure and bankruptcy, we'll get you through a short sale and get you into the Air Force." And that's exactly what he did. He came in, he short sailed me. I went into the Air Force at 33 years old, right before the 34-year-old cutoff. My nickname was Gramps in basic training because I was like twice the age of all the 32-year-old kids. But it gave me a reset button in life, and that guy saved me. Not only did he do that, but like he bought things. For some of you guys listening, you can't profit off a short sale, but we
Yeah.
desperately needed money. So he was like buying our appliances, our pool,
Oh,
sheds,
wow.
things that we had around the house for cash. Cash was like food on my kids' back, literally, groceries, Christmas presents for 1 year. Like it was a lifesaver. This guy saved my ass. And what I always tell people, what we do and I'll get into further about my career, it was real estate investors. We help a lot of people get reset buttons in life. We're all one or two life choices or one or two life events like the Great Recession of hitting rock bottom. And sometimes we don't know how to get out. Sometimes a real estate agent is the right fit, but sometimes they're not. And that's where a real estate investor comes in. So go into the Air Force, get out of the Air Force, get divorced. Next thing you know, I'm 40 years old. And I'm divorced for a couple of years, and I'm living on my own with two young kids, 50% of the time. And I'm like, I'm starting to feel pretty vulnerable. Where do I go from here? Like, I got a good job. It could be gone tomorrow. I already know. I already went through this. I have no control of my future. That's when I decided I was going to go all in on real estate. I came across a podcast from Tom Kroll down in South Florida, and he was a wholesaling coach at the time. And if anybody doesn't know what wholesaling is basically you get a property under contract at 123 Main Street, and you can assign the rights to that contract to somebody else to execute the contract, and you would get paid a fee. So I could go out and find these distressed homes, get them under contract, sell the contract to somebody else. That's how I would get paid. I didn't need money to buy the house or flip the house or anything like that. I was like, all right, I'm in. But I needed some money and I didn't have any. So I ended up selling my townhouse on my 40th birthday. I had some equity in that property. I took $11,000 of that equity, 5,000 went into a coaching program, $6,000 went into me starting my initial direct mail campaign and setting up my LLC. And we did that January 2017. Got my first deal. I don't know if you'll see it here with the light in the background, but this is my first check for $5,000. Got that in 90 days. I paid for the coaching program. Went on to do 10 deals that year. Made $70,000. Nothing great, but the foundation was built. As I stand here today, wrapping up our ninth year, we're approaching 500 off-market closed deals in 6 different states and $12 million in gross profits. None of that would have ever happened if it wasn't for that real estate investor back in 2009, 2010. also wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the balls to sell my house and join a coaching program and just lay it all on the line. So that's kind of my journey. There's obviously a lot to it, but that's kind of the cliff notes of it all.
Oh, no, it's quite a journey. And it's amazing how each step has really led into the next chapter and how you've been able to build on all of the things you've learned each step of the way as well. So the investing side of what you do is very unique. And for people listening or watching the show, they may not have heard of wholesaling. And I appreciate you explaining it a little bit. So basically, you're able to get a property under contract, but before it closes, you're able to find someone else to basically step in as the end buyer of that
Correct.
property. Yep.
Correct. Yep. Yep. So we'll
So
get the
explain a
property
little
under
bit about how
contract
that's
for,
beneficial to everyone. Like, what is your role in that?
yeah. So, my story really comes to this place, right? Like that investor saved my butt that day, right? And that was the worst time in my life, right? I was suicidal, I was depressed. But now, 15 years later, it literally was like one of the best things that ever happened to me. What he did to me is what my business model does to people in my community and have been doing in my community for years. So I'm basically paying it forward. So now people fall in distress in different scenarios, right? They could be facing foreclosure, behind on tax, paying their taxes. They could have inherited a house that they don't want. They may not be able to afford the house. They may be a hoarder. There's all kinds of scenarios where distress comes in, where a local real estate agent just doesn't fit the criteria. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that today, if
Yeah.
time allows. But so what happens is we can come in, and I always tell people we are in the people business. The houses are a commodity. These people have problems. We meet with them. We identify the problems as a wholesaler or as a house buyer, help them out of those situations by sometimes giving them money up front, buying the house, giving them lease carrybacks, helping them find the next place, physically moving them to different states and different places. Whatever it takes, we help these people out of these tough transitions. And it gives them a reset button in life. The house is whatever it is the anchor keeping them grounded from getting to that next level. And they don't know how to get rid of this problem house. So we come
Yeah.
in and help them with all the stuff behind the scenes to add value, to get them to the next steps. We take the equity in that house by putting it under contract, selling it to another investor when you wholesale. And, let's say we get a property under contract at 123 Main Street for 100 grand. That investor will buy it at 120. We get the $20,000 assignment fee in between. It's kind of like a finder's fee to some extent. But
Mhm.
in that $20,000, there's marketing costs that we have to do, direct mail and things of that nature, but
Yeah.
also the value we bring to those sellers. And the cash buyer doesn't have to worry about any of that. He just basically just gets the house free of any title issues and close on it. We have to do all the stuff behind the scenes as far as logistics to help these people. So we are in the people business. We solve people's problems with creative solutions, and they pay us back with equity in their home.
I love that perspective because people often in the industry think of wholesalers as sort of predators. They're really not out there to be beneficial. But your perspective is so refreshing and so unique that I think a lot of people have to hear that. I love that you're sharing that and the way that it changed your life. And you can certainly, instead of most of us think about real estate as something wonderful to invest in, but there are people out there that are stuck that really don't know what to do, and that's where you can come and help.
100%. And for the most part, listen, we know 95% of the time a local real estate agent or broker is the best solution for most sellers and buyers. But there is this box that is like the 5%, but there's so many people that fall into the criteria of that box that need help. And yes, some agents know enough to help, but most agents don't. And you think of like your hoarder house, right? If you have a house that is literally up to the ceiling of stuff, right? You're talking 6, 8 dumps worth of stuff. And I mean, we've seen it all over the years,
Yeah.
feces throughout the entire house from animals gone wild. Is a local real estate agent really going to try to take on a listing like that? And what if this person needs to sell this house, but also doesn't want to put it on the MLS because they're embarrassed and ashamed, right?
Yeah.
So what
Right.
can you do in that situation? Now, that's just one scenario, but there's so many other scenarios that fall into an agent isn't the right fit, a wholesaler or a cash buyer, house buyer like myself could come in and be the answers to that solution. And there's a lot of risk because, we're buying the house, and sometimes when you clean that stuff out, you might find something completely different than what you thought.
So when you're seeking properties for wholesaling, you had mentioned obviously with your situation, it was like a short sale that you were dealing with. Now, typically when we think about these, we think about, the golden scenario for you is if they own it free and clear, right? That makes it
Yeah.
really easy. But do you work with homeowners then if they are in trouble situations where they're in pre-foreclosure or where they're underwater and you help them with those steps? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, all the time. It can get tricky at times when they basically owe more than the property's worth, right?
Mhm.
And at some point, there's nothing we can do. And that happens sometimes, right? The house is in just, in such bad shape. And for some reason, maybe they took out a second mortgage on it or a HELOC and they spent it. And it's like, they owe 400,000, but as the house sits, it's worth like 350. There's really not much you can do there. And I'm not a short sale specialist. And maybe at that point, that's the route to go. But we help people from pre foreclosure all the time.
Gotcha.
And, a lot of times what we'll do is we will, depending on if we get to a situation where we can't buy it outright, and a lot of times we're trying to beat that auction date and things of that nature. For example, we have a house now where we couldn't get the numbers to work because what the house needed for work based on the resale value of the house and what they owed on it, we really couldn't get the numbers to work. So we actually took over their mortgage. So the mortgage is in their name. We took over their mortgage. The deed is now in our name. This helps keep our costs low because now I didn't have to go and buy the house for $300,000 with a loan and have all those costs to go with it. But with
Yeah.
that, we had to bring about $20,000 to the table to get them current. We did that right away. So now that we're making the payments, they don't have to worry about falling behind and their credit getting hurt any worse. And then we're taking a small loan to renovate the property while we're making their mortgage payments. And then we're going to sell it and then pay off all their debt and we'll all be out of it. So there's a lot of creative solutions that we could do.
Yeah.
Every situation is a little bit different. It's always best if we can just buy it with a straight cash offer, but sometimes that isn't always the case. Sometimes we have to buy it with a cash offer, and sometimes we give them a profit share on the back end, meaning like, hey, we need to make X first, and anything over X, we can split 50-50. So we do a lot of creative ways because we will obviously want to make money. We're in business to make money, but we
Mhm.
have to take care of the seller in the process.
So when you're seeking properties, is there a certain type of property that you're really looking for, a single family home, or does it matter if it's a condo or townhouse?
Doesn't
What are your
matter. Yeah.
criteria?
No, we look at everything.
Okay.
Up here in New England, for me to buy and keep old farmhouses aren't my jam. We have a lot
Mhm.
of houses up here from the 1700s and 1800s. And
Yeah.
as I'm sitting here, I'm flipping one from the 1700s. But I typically don't do those. I wholesale those to other people. But distress comes in different ways. We can't control what that is. If I'm going to buy and hold and keep a property, yes, there's certain rental properties that I have criteria for. But outside of that, we're at a point now because we have so many houses that come in each and every month. We cherry pick the ones we want to flip. We wholesale the ones that we don't. I guess with that, there's some criteria, but there's different variables that go into that. But for the most part, if somebody's distressed, I don't care if it's a mobile home in a mobile home park, or if it's a 400-year-old house, or it's a 7-unit building, whatever it is, and everything in between, we're going to try to find a way to help them and make some money doing it.
Got it. So when you are wholesaling a property, then you have a contract on the property. How do you go about finding the end investor then who's going to purchase that?
Oh,
What's your
I love
process?
this. I love this question. I love it. All right. So I don't do it the traditional way, right? So a lot of people, if you're familiar with wholesaling, go get the deal, then go find a buyer, right? And then you start running around, hey, buy this house, buy this house.
Mhm.
And maybe you even have a few buyers. If you have a few buyers, this puts you as what I call a CBE, a cash buyer employee. Basically, you're just their little errand boy. Go and find them the good deals. You're doing all the hard work. You're going to bring
Yeah.
them the deal. And all they're going to do is beat you down on price, right? And so you don't want to do that because you're cutting yourself short. And then if you're getting a deal under contract and then you're rushing around, this is why I don't like the virtual model, like doing ones in different states over the phone, because now you're scrambling to find a buyer. The first buyer that takes it, you're basically a motivated seller yourself, right? You're buying it from a motivated seller to become a motivated seller. So we like to flip the script. And what I believe in, and this is what we teach in our coaching program when they come in as wholesalers, is we build a big cash buyers list. And I like to leverage the MLS even as much as possible because let's face it, there's more buyers on the MLS than anything, right? So
Absolutely.
trying to get the buyers on the MLS, which some of them may be retail, as much as a huge, like 1,500, 2,500 cash buyers on our cash buyers list. And we do a one-time open house. We call it an inspection walkthrough because I'm not a broker. I can't call it an open house. We call it
Hmm.
an inspection walkthrough. We do a one-time showing, 60 to 90 minutes during the week. When we tell everybody this is your one time to come see this property. All your due diligence, bring your contractors, your lenders, your business partners. It's the only time the house is as seen as is on this day. This is how you're getting the house. And then all we want is your bids the next day. So we treat it like an auction. So if we get a house under contract for $100,000, we only mark it up $4,900. We want to keep it super low because the lower it is, the more attraction it gets. And then I get everybody into this little fishbowl, which gets the scarcity mindset going. It gets competitiveness get going, and the bids just start going up from there. And then the next day, all the bids are due, and we just take the best offer. It may not be the highest, but we take the best offer. This creates a bidding war, and this is what gets us really big assignment fees on the back end because you're doing so much work on the front end.
Yeah.
There's a difference. Like you could just go find a buyer for $20,000 or do our process and get $35,000 off the cash buyers.
Right.
That $15,000, 10 to 20 times a year is a significant amount of money. So
That's a terrific system you've got. Yeah, and,
thank
and
you.
unique in the wholesaling world. So that works very, very well. Now, when you're going through this, and you said there's sometimes you identify properties that you want to hold yourself versus wholesale. There's obviously a lot of investors who listen to the show and such. How do you determine what makes a good investment that you want to well, let's talk about holding first and renting. What makes a good property for you to hold? What are your criteria there?
Yeah, so up here in the Northeast, it's really tough to cash flow, so it's very, very challenging. So what we look for are multifamily properties, typically 3 units or more, especially in New Hampshire with property taxes being so high. Any single families or duplexes typically don't do very well. And honestly, the average house price up here is $450,000. So you can't buy a single family and really make it cash flow. So you're
Yeah.
really looking for properties that have 3 or more units. And then we look at the BRRRR method. And if you're not familiar with the BRRRR method, it's let me make sure I get the acronym right. It's buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat, right? So we're buying the property, we're renovating the property, we get it stabilized with rental tenants, we refinance it with the bank, and then we repeat the process. So that's a BRRRR model. So typically for us, if we can get a 3 family, let's just say it's worth $600,000, and I could buy it for $300,000 with, I use other people's money. I never use my own. I use my private
Mhm.
lenders, not hard money, but private lenders. I buy it for 300,000. I borrow that extra $150,000 in renovations, like let's say $50,000 per door. I'm all in it for roughly $450,000 to $500,000. I'll go refinance it with a bank. They appraise it at 600. Then they come back and they say, well, we'll either give you 75 to 80% loan to value. So that could be anywhere from 450 to close to $500,000 in this scenario. So I may have 10, 15, $20,000 my own money in the bank into this deal. Sometimes I have no money into this deal. Sometimes if I buy, they pay me $10 to $20,000 out of the deal. And then, they typically, honestly, just to be really authentic and real, like I always try to be, most of these deals, they cash flow very little the first year or
Yeah.
two. It's the slow increase in rents year after year that get it to cash flow probably about 3 years in on average around here in the Northeast. But the huge thing about here in the Northeast is not only will I get tax savings from cost segregation and forced depreciation and things of that nature, which help me as a business that has a lot of capital gains, but
Mhm.
the appreciation up here is huge. And
Yeah.
it's not uncommon for some of these houses to appreciate 10% year after year or 5 to
Wow.
10%. So, you may get $20,000, $30,000 in appreciation in one year. That alone is $2,000 or $3,000 in cash flow to some level. So that's typically what we look for. If we can BRRRR a property and be in it for somewhere around 75 to 80% loan to value, and I don't have to bring a lot of money to the table, we keep it. If we feel it's going to be closer to like 90% or more, then we'll just wholesale it to somebody else and just take our money and run.
Yeah, understood. So when you're doing the acquisition, then it's so many people talk to me about the 1% rule because that was like the old adage in investing,
Yeah,
right? It's almost impossible to find that any longer.
it's
So I
really tough.
thought what you were mentioning about the looking forward into the future, 3 years into the future, and having it cash flow well at that point has to be sort of the new way you look at investment properties like this. I thought that's really important for investors to hear.
Yeah, it's a long game, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of these properties, I'm looking for 5 to 10 years down the road. Can you get properties at cash flow? Yes. I'm buying them in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm buying turnkey rentals down there for 70, $80,000 and I'm renting them out for 12. That cash flows. But the equity and appreciation is very different, right? When I was in
Right.
Buffalo and upstate New York, I still own a couple single families. Don't buy in New York, listeners. Don't buy in New York. They cash flow great, but the appreciation is terrible, right? And
Yeah.
we run the risk of what if the market changes, right? And it drops down in value. Well, typically with rental properties, unless you're in that 5 year fix amortization where you're going to have to, refinance in 5 years and the market tanks, you might get yourself in some hot water. But for the most part, in 5 years here in the Northeast, they have so much appreciation that even if they came down, you're still going to be okay. It's been crazy. It's starting to level out a little bit up here, but 10 years, I mean, most of these properties double in value in 10 years. So if I buy a $400,000 three family, 10 years down the road, it's worth $800,000. I may only owe two on it. Right. So
Right.
that's how I look at my rental properties. And my business provides me my cash flow and my pay. So I don't need to live or really need money for those houses. I just need those houses to cash flow enough to support themselves for the repairs and vacancies and things of that nature.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's definitely a long game.
It is a long
When
game.
when you're investing in the properties and performing renovations, you're putting money into the properties. What gives you the best return? What are you focused on in terms of improvements that you're making?
Well, when it comes to flips, it's always kitchens and bathrooms. Always,
Hmm.
always. Sometimes we cut corners there, sometimes we regret it. So kitchens and bathrooms sell, but when a lot of realtors we talk to, because we do a lot of presentations at brokerages, and they're always like, are you going to just do this cookie cutter color scheme, or are you going to just do this backsplash, or are you going to do, I'm like, yeah, because I have to, as much as I'd love to custom design this like the houses on TV, that doesn't make me any money, right? When I'm flipping houses, I'm trying to appeal to the masses, and I need to make it attractive to most people, but I also need to make a profit. So it's a delicate balance because I can't control always how much I'm going to buy a house for, right? I might want to buy it for 200,000, but we may sit at a price of 240, which may leave me with $60,000 in renovation costs as opposed to 100. I can do a lot more with 100 than I can 60. So then I
Yeah.
have to pick and choose what works best. But we always start with the flooring, paint, kitchen, and baths. That tends to gives you the best ROI for sure.
Perfect. Yeah, flooring, paint, kitchen, and baths. That's
Yeah.
that's great. Now, when you're going through the process, also you deal with real estate agents sometimes. And I know down here we have a large number of agents. You work in Florida as well a bit. So Florida has like we're ranked sixth in the country for population, but we have the most real estate agents in the country here. So there's a lot of us. So when you're dealing with real estate agents, what are some important things for realtors to know about how you work or what they should anticipate dealing with a wholesaler like yourself?
Yeah. So what I would say is that, we know in 2024, I haven't seen the statistics yet for 2025, but 2024, there was a large percentage of realtors that didn't even do one deal nationally, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of realtors out there that are struggling. Everybody was doing great when post COVID, but after the interest rates went up, it started to sing a different tune for a lot of realtors because the ones
Yeah.
that needed to really sell were the ones that rose to the top, where the other ones struggled.
Yeah.
But what I would say with agents is what we try to teach people is if you have a cash buyer, it could be a wholesaler or a cash buyer investor. I play both, wear both hats, right? You want to build relationships with these people because when you're out and about through your referral network, your marketing, right, you're coming across houses that don't make a great listing for you. Again, let's go back to that hoarder house or up here in the Northeast. Sometimes we have people that have like all these junk cars in their yard, right? And it just
Mhm.
doesn't show well. It doesn't look good. Maybe the house is just it needs too much work. Maybe it won't even qualify for our FHA or conventional financing loan, right? And it needs to be a cash purchase. Typically, most realtors would walk away with that, away from something like that. But these people
Yeah.
need help. So if agents could say, hey, rather than walking away from that situation and think to themselves, I have a guy, that guy could be somebody like myself who could come in and buy the house. Now, we buy houses from realtors all the time. What we do is say, the realtor will bring us one that fits our criteria. They bring us in. We meet directly with the seller, with the agent, sit down, talk, negotiate terms and all the value we can bring. And then with the agent, we're paying them both sides of the commission, the listing commission and representing us as a buying agent. So I'm giving them, 4% of whatever that buy price is. And then when I go to resell the property, whether I fix it up or don't fix it up, I resell it, I'm giving them the listing on the back end. So they're getting paid twice to sell it to us initially, and then possibly twice if they can bring a buyer on the second time around as well. This is a deal that you would walk away from completely. Now imagine if you could do this 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times a year on top of everything else you're doing. And guess what? People like me, we need to buy houses all the time. We're constantly looking. Most retail buyers, what is it, every 5 to 7 years you get a repeat transaction? I'm looking to buy 5 to 7 houses a month. Build relationships with people like that, because when the retail market gets slow, your investors are still buying and selling, and it can fill in a lot of gaps so you don't have the roller coaster ride up and down.
Yeah, that's great. You are an amazing person to know. Just to have another tool in a realtor's toolbox to go
Exactly.
to. You talk about having the right tool for the job. Sometimes you just like you said, you have a property that would be difficult to sell on the regular market traditionally, and you are the perfect fit for that type of property.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And and with our coaching program, we have a lot of agents that work both sides. They wear both hats, right? They're a listing agent, or they learn how to wholesale and flip houses and things of that nature. And if you can do both of those, that's even better for you as an agent. I strongly suggest you try to become an investor as an agent too, because you will get great opportunities. And if you know how to take those opportunities and turn them into great investments, whether it's long-term holds or flips, you can double, triple, quadruple your income in a year without doing much work.
Yes, absolutely. And who doesn't want that? I mean, we all want to
Exactly.
achieve that. Well, what is the best way for people to reach you if they'd like to reach out, if they have questions, if they have a property in mind that would work for you, or one that they have questions about, if you'd be interested in acquiring, what's the best way for them to touch base?
Yeah, I'm all over the social media. Jeremy Beland, Beland, Jeremy Jeremy, Beland, Beland. Find me all over social. Also, my coaching program is REI Freedom. It still stands for Real Estate Investing Freedom. You can find me there. And honestly, I'll give you guys a free gift here too if you guys want. If you go to reifreedom.com/gift. In there is our top, as a PDF ebook on our top sales techniques to get more deals, bigger deals with less cancellations. This works really good for agents too. This is really will help you whether you're a wholesaler or an agent sitting in somebody's living room to get that contract and get that deal done.
That's amazing. So it's REI, one more time,
Freedom.
freedom.com/gift. Is that
You
right?
got it.
Okay.
Free
Excellent.
ebook.
Excellent. Jeremy Beland, thank you so much for joining us today and for your time. I mean, truly, I learned a lot today, and I think our listeners did as well. So I really appreciate you joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us on Real Estate on the Up. Thanks for tuning in and listening, and we will catch you next time. Take care. As we conclude another eye-opening episode of Real Estate on the Up, I want to express my appreciation for joining us. Thank you for being a valuable part of the Real Estate on the Up community. Your time and engagement mean the world, so make sure you subscribe and leave a review. Your real estate goals are my priority, and my team and I are here to provide the personalized attention and service that have earned us high recognition. If you have questions, need guidance, or are ready to make a move, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm just a message away. I'm Kyle Madorin, one of Rate My Agent's top 100 in the United States, signing off. Until next time, take care and make those real estate dreams a reality.